Hi, everyone, and welcome to Bees and Reverie Radio, a podcast about native plants, bees, butterflies, and biodiversity in our own backyards and how we can make a difference. I'm Emily Wayland, and this is another summer special here today on the summer solstice itself. Today, I am joined by my friend, Dr. Annie Purcell, whose family runs a ranch in Northeast Texas called Hot Mess Ranch. They share their adventures of ranching with an adorable cast and crew of not only humans, but Angus cattle, horses, goats, chickens, and more. Annie is an avid gardener like myself, and we met through TikTok just like myself and LaDonna. LaDonna will not be joining us today. She is still on summer break. I asked Annie to come on the show for our summer solstice episode because I thought it might be fun to have a conversation about gardening with native plants and rearing monarchs from two very different areas of the United States. Now, LaDonna and I are far apart as well, but our ecoregions overlap more than Wisconsin and Texas do. So it's time to expand our horizons into the southern part of the country. So, welcome to the show, Annie, and thank you for agreeing to do this episode with me. So, Annie, can you tell us a bit about yourself, perhaps a bit about HMR or Hot Mess Ranch for people who might not be familiar?
Sure. We moved out from the suburbs to the ranch 4 years ago now, and we have about 60 acres where, as you said, we have quarter horses that we are working on barrel racing. We have, all kinds of animals. And the animals are mostly my husband's thing. I'm married. I have 4 kids and a daughter-in-law. But my big thing is the gardening, both for habitat restoration. Um, I grow vegetables and I have a registered monarch way station on the property where I have my butterfly garden and it's just pretty.
Yeah. And are you comfortable talking about your occupation or no?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I am a teacher. I have my doctorate in curriculum and instruction with an emphasis on early childhood education. I am going into my 18th year of teaching. I'll be teaching first grade, and that is a fun age to share my monarch raising endeavors with my students because I can find even an egg and bring it to class, and they can watch it from an egg all the way up to a butterfly. And that's a great way for them to learn and get excited about butterflies and monarchs also.
And were you interested in like the monarch rearing thing before you were a teacher, or did that kind of come with the territory?
I grew up on a ranch in central Texas, and there's just green milkweed everywhere. Like our horse pasture was just covered with it. And we just would go out all the time and find monarch caterpillars and put them in a jar. And that was
Mm-hmm.
just part of my childhood. Um, and I never really thought, and that was in the 80s when I doubt monarchs were even on the decline yet. But
No, they weren't. Yeah.
so that was just like saving monarchs was not um a big thing for me,
Mm-hmm.
but I loved the butterflies. I loved the monarchs. I've always loved watching their life cycle. I really got well, even when I lived in the suburbs, a lady started a butterfly garden in our suburb. We had like a park, and there was a circular area where she asked the parks department if she could use it for a butterfly garden, and she had milkweed, and not just milkweed. She also had like dill parsley. She had a bunch of different host plants. And so that was a really cool thing to get to go see while we lived in the
Mm-hmm.
suburbs. And I would try to plant milkweed and stuff when the most recent suburb we lived in had very strict HOAs, and they
Oh,
didn't
okay.
they didn't like that. But yeah, I became really interested in when we moved out here, and I had all this land, and we're directly in the path of the migration. So there's so much land that I can use to restore habitat, and I like to keep my own garden full of stuff and pretty up by my house, but all over the property I'm able to plant milkweed and plant native wildflowers and things like that for the butterflies.
That's such a great opportunity. Now, did you start rearing again, like when you were in the suburbs, or is that something that you started up when you moved to the ranch again?
No, I started that when I moved to the ranch again. I never had
Gotcha.
habitats or anything like that. When I was a kid, it was just a jar and a stick. Um,
Right.
and but now, I have the mesh enclosures. I try really hard to, if the horses are going to leave them alone, hang the mesh enclosures outside so that they still, get the regular
Mhm.
cold and heat cycles and sun cycles and everything. So, it's like they're being raised in the wild, except, the wasps can't get
Protected.
them.
Right. And I think that's the key. I think I grew up in a very similar situation where I feel like science, we just didn't know how the best way to raise them at the time. So it was just like, oh yeah, you can just get your old pretzel jar or whatever and throw it in there. It'll all be fine. But yeah, they weren't, I mean, even when I was in the night, because I grew up in like the late 80s and 90s, they weren't on the decline yet either. And it was kind of a surprise when that started to become a problem.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, here we are. So can you tell us a bit about what your environment is like in Northeast Texas? Like what's your growing zone or ecoregion? Like and what's your soil like? And do you have any
Yeah,
native plants that a lot of people might recognize?
um, I think so. I'm in zone 8B. Our climate is hot and humid and miserable. And um, our soil is a mixture of sandy loam and red clay. And it
Okay.
really kind of depends on where you stick the shovel in if you're going to get clay or loam. So um it's really kind of a crapshoot what you're going to get when you dig somewhere. But we're kind of right on the border of the Black Plains and the piney woods in Texas, over in Northeast Texas. So we're not too far from Dallas, but the native plants I have purple coneflower, and I also have red and yellow coneflower because they're pretty. Um, I have black-eyed Susans and blanket flowers. I have some native salvia. I can't remember which kind of salvia it is off the top of my head, but I did check to make sure it was a native one. Oh, we have lantana. Some species of lantana are native here. Texas natives tend to be a little different because they have to be made of thick stuff to survive here. Um,
Mm,
and
mhm.
when I talk to people and when Texas gardeners kind of talk to each other, there's like a difference between plants that take full sun and take Texas full sun. Because
That's a whole different degree,
here,
huh?
yes, plants, full sun plants, um, often, if they're not native to Texas, usually are part sun plants here because plants that can uh, plants can't always take the heat because we're very we succumb to droughts just pretty much every year, every summer. We have drought conditions. Some years are worse than others, and then the extreme heat and humidity, and well, I guess, yeah, plants, humidity matters to plants.
Yeah, it really does.
It's heat index. That's what I was thinking. The heat index doesn't matter to plants, but
Oh, right.
I was thinking something about the heat doesn't matter. Anyway, um, but the plants that can take full Texas sun, lantana absolutely, and Texas sage, and the bees love Texas sage. And the zinnias aren't native. They're but they can take it. Like they can be sun up
Okay.
to sundown, heat all day, and the butterflies love the zinnias. And they're not invasive or anything. They just aren't native.
No,
But
and we've talked about me and LaDonna have talked about before, like there's a good threshold for native gardening. Like it's good to have like 70% native and 30% non-native. And there's so
mhm,
many good annuals that are good supplementary nectar plants for pollinators, and zinnias are one of them. And they're
yeah.
beautiful. And what about the milkweed there? Is that like a full sun plant or is it like
Yes, the our main milkweed, our main native milkweed down here is green and antelope horn milkweed, and they are full Texas sun plants. They're not the prettiest milkweed, by a long shot.
Oh, I would disagree.
I grow other native milkweed here that's much prettier, and common milkweed does good in the full Texas sun, and butterfly weed also. My swamp milkweed is kind of riding the struggle bus right now, but
Oh no.
we'll see. We'll see what happens with that.
Do you have the swamp milkweed plant? You have a lake in the middle. For those who aren't familiar with Hot Miss Ranch on TikTok, you have a lake in the middle of your property. Is that where you have the swamp milkweed?
No, I actually have it in my garden. There's a low point that tends to collect water, and it is also near the sprinkler system for the septic tank.
Oh, okay.
And so it stays wetter than usual. So I have to have things there that can handle wet feet. So I have my swamp milkweed and Greg's mist flower there. Um,
Mhm.
but the swamp milkweed, everything got overgrown. We have a really, really early growing season. I can usually start getting things in the ground in February here.
That's wild.
I know. But before school is that's spring is the busiest time for teachers. And so
Mhm.
in April and May, I don't have as much time and my garden tends to get overgrown. And that's what happened with my swamp milkweed. This year it was the Johnson. Every year it's a different something invasive. And this year it was Johnson grass. And I dug it all out and I found the swamp milkweed kind of buried
Oh
under it.
no.
So hopefully it'll perk up now that it can get the sun and not be choked out, but we'll see.
And is the Johnson grass something that it's difficult to eradicate, or is it pretty much you can count on it being done being invasive once you do pull it out?
What's hard about it is that it spreads through rhizomes underground. So if
Mm,
you miss
mhm.
any piece of the roots, then it just pops right back up. So I
Right.
dug it all out like with a shovel. Um, and I'm still every day go in there and yanking little shoots out that are trying to stick back up. So
Right.
it's a hard one. And
Mhm.
like nothing kills it unless I want to, spray, I don't want to spray. But if I wanted to spray like grass killer or something, but I'm not going to spray it with anything. I'm just going to keep on ripping it out. But it's
It's a
every year it's
nightmare.
something, and
Yeah.
that's my one this year.
I've had the same one for several years, and it will not die. It is good old bindweed, and it is I probably will never defeat it, although I hear people have. I don't know. It's a
think you have
mystery
to
to me.
burn it because isn't it morning glories? Isn't that what
Yeah.
mine is?
Yeah, and
Down here they have to burn it.
I've heard that burning it can be a problem if they've already gone to flower because it'll distribute the seeds that way. But at the same time, I pull it up before it tries to flower and it just still keeps going. Like I've heard that you're supposed to just keep pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling. Like it's actually
Um,
immune to Roundup, which is the worst thing I've ever heard of.
yeah.
But I haven't gotten there yet with it, so we'll see. But
Well,
though
here
it's another.
they burn it in the winter here. This is off topic
Oh,
podcast.
so it's
But they
after.
do a control burn. Like there was a house down the street that it took over, like you couldn't see their fence anymore. You couldn't see the stop sign. It was up the power lines. And once winter, when it went dormant, they just did a control burn and just burned the whole area and it didn't come back this year.
Oh my gosh. That I'm glad they got it because it is a nightmare. And I don't think
Yeah.
I could do a burn on my property, honestly, but
Yeah.
is there an invasive down there in Texas that is is the Johnson grass your worst nightmare or have you dealt with worse?
The ragweed is pretty bad, but see, ragweed and nutsedge are both problematic, but they're just much easier to pull out. You like
Mm, mhm.
the Johnson grass is the hardest one because it goes so deep and you have to dig and dig and dig
Mhm.
and dig. Um, and it just like refuses to die. Like crepe myrtles also refuse to die.
And it's always the ones that you don't want around that are the most difficult to die, but I guess we wouldn't call them weeds otherwise.
Yeah.
So you recently got a bunch of free milkweed from Monarch Watch. Can you tell us about how you went about that and how much milkweed you received and what you're doing with that?
Yes, I just applied online for the with the grant and I got put on the wait list, you have to mark your exact like latitude and longitude, and you have to go on like Google World and outline where you want to do it. And you can do it for different reasons. I did it for habitat restoration, but they have it for schools and things like that too. It wasn't long, about a week later, they said that mine was accepted. I came off the wait list, and they sent they tell you on there how much they send, but in Texas it's more. I and
Really?
I don't remember the numbers, but it says like, it tells you so they sent me green milkweed and antelope horn milkweed because those are what's truly native here.
Mhm.
And it would say, you know, you get a flat with this many, but in Texas it's this many. And it was I want to say there were 52 plants in each flat, and it was 4 flats.
Oh my gosh, so you got like 200 plus plants.
Yeah, it was a lot of plants. And they came from a local nursery here in Dallas, and were, they were teeny tiny, but they were
Mhm.
so healthy. They looked great. There was a plant, at least one plant in every little pod. You get big flats like that, and sometimes there's empty little pods that where there was a
Yeah.
dud or one didn't make it. But some of them had two or three in there, and I
Oh,
could split
wow.
them off, and so it was a ton. So I got done the area I wanted, and I still had. They recommend that you plant a clump of three together, and then leave space before you plant your next group. Um,
Mm.
to keep the butterflies from egg bombing, and so that if predators find one group, they won't necessarily, take everything out. So I got done the area that I had wanted done, and I still had a few left because I had all these extras from the ones that had two or three plants. So I went around the rest of the property and found good areas where we don't have a lot of animal foot traffic. And I, I overthink things. And so
I
I
feel
was
you.
thinking, where can I plant this where the caterpillars will have somewhere safe to go to molt or to make their
Mhm.
chrysalis? So, that was kind of fun to walk around and hunt. And it worked out because I planted them, all those extras, kind of far in between because they spread so easily here. Once you get one in the ground and it, goes to seed, then the next year there's a ton. So I just kind of wanted to space them out so that they could grow and go to seed, and um, you know, make more babies. I was worried when I first got it. I was worried that I wasn't going to remember where, because you have to water them till they're established, and then
Right.
they'll
Yeah.
live forever no matter what. And I was like, I'm not going to remember where I planted all these little babies. But then it started raining, and it didn't stop
It didn't
for a
stop.
long time. And they were about 2 inches tall when I put them in. And that was, when was that? I want to say that was in April.
I think that's right because I remember you told me when they came and I think, yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
remembering back and that makes sense.
Yeah. And the last time I, did a walk around that pasture, they were about almost 5 inches tall. So they've grown a lot in this short little time that they've been here because all this rain.
Now, do you find like I know the goats and the chickens and every animals have been in your garden. Do they tend to leave your native plants alone or do they bother them as well?
Well, my garden is fenced off because
Okay.
goats eat everything. Like
Yeah.
they are indiscriminate, and they'll just eat anything, except they do not eat milkweed.
Well, that's good.
So none of the animals do, so it can be in our pastures and stuff, and they just leave it
They
alone.
know to leave it alone. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas the goats really don't eat flowers that much. Anything flowering, they pretty much leave alone. They
Because they
really
keep
like
the weeds down by
shrubs.
your house a lot, right?
Yes. They they eat brush. They love poison ivy.
Well, that's good.
They did eat my roses down to the ground when we first got them. So
Oh, no.
had to move my roses. I just moved the root ball and they came back. So
Well, at least they came back.
yeah.
But that's
But that's the only like flowering thing I can think of that they'll eat. It's like stem and all. Like they don't care about the thorns.
right, right. And the horses, do they ever
No,
try
the
to?
horses are no, the horses are snobby. They eat they eat grass only. They won't eat anything flowering or anything that doesn't look like grass.
Interesting. Do you have any like clovers growing in your pasture? Because I know up by me, because for those who are listening, I horses are another hobby of mine, and the herd where I ride and the horse I lease, they love clover, and I swear in the height of summer, after they eat a bunch of clover, they spit so much. It's like they're hawking up a loogie, but they love clover and they love the flowers so much. I never really expected that.
Yeah,
Um,
that we have a grass mix in the backyard that had a bunch for horses that had clover in it, and they ate it, but it was like the last thing they ate,
that's
which is
weird.
interesting.
Yeah. So you obviously we've discussed that you rear monarchs. How has this season been going for you so far? And I know you're kind of like the way your season goes is a little bit different than mine. Just so listeners have a little bit of background, when monarchs overwinter, they overwinter in central Mexico, and in every spring they fly back up through Texas, breed in Texas, and continue to fly north. So Texas and like Oklahoma are very important states for the monarchs because that is a major beginning and late season breeding ground. So, can you tell us a little bit about how when your season starts, how it's going now, and all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah, I get I feel like the butterflies migrating north tend to stay slightly east. I feel like people east of me, like in the Dallas area, get a ton in the spring, and I don't get a ton in the spring. But then when they migrate back south, that's when I get a ton. I have the most caterpillars in September. um they're
Oh,
just they're just everywhere, and then they're the migrating generation that come out, and they're the prettiest generation, and they're huge and beautiful. And so that's what and that works out for as a teacher too, because in fall, and we're just starting to get to know each other, and it's a good fun kind of beginning of the year activity for them to get to watch the monarchs and go release the monarchs. And I have a book called Gotta Go, about a little monarch migrating to Mexico and back, and it's really cute. So that's a fun way to incorporate them at the beginning of the year. But for right now, I had some. I had most of them die from tea fly, which I've never
yeah.
had before.
We'll
Um,
talk about that.
so I had a lot that did not make it, but the ones that one of them that I found was already in its fifth instar, and it made its chrysalis the next day. And then the rest, I got three that hatched from an egg that I hatched from an egg and released, all males. So that's all I've had so far this year. I have not gone out to look because it's been so humid. It's just miserable.
Right. Yeah. It's and like looking for eggs can take a while and you don't want to be out
Yeah.
in that heat too long. It's just not safe.
Hmm.
So tachnid tea flies are tachnid flies, and those I believe were introduced to the US because they help control like larvae on crops. Because what the tea flies do is they lay eggs on a caterpillar that's big enough. The larvae then go into the caterpillar, consume it, and then come out before they pupate on strings. If you want to Google it, listeners, you can. It is, I had it, I would say late college, and that was my first experience. And that is the reason I did not raise for several years until adulthood. Um, it is something out of a nightmare, but it comes with the territory and it can happen. So uh, that's why it's important if you're going to rear, and you don't want to risk that, you'll likely not run into that when they're in egg form because they're way too small to get laid on. Now, obviously, monarchs do deal with all sorts of parasites, but this is one of the, I would say, more cringy, gross ones. And did this kind of deter you from rearing at all, or was it just one of those things that you're like, well, this stinks, I'm dealing with it, but
No, it didn't deter me. It's disappointing, of course.
mhm.
But in, in nature, I feel like it's like 3 to 5 or 1 to 3% make it to adulthood or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's
Like
something like that.
it's such a
Mhm.
tiny number. So, anything can happen to them. And I just feel like in some states, they're not allowed to rear monarchs at all or, touch them. And I just feel like it's our fault that
Yeah,
they're in this predicament. So if we can help them, help bump that percentage up a little bit, um, then I feel like it's kind of our responsibility because we did this. So that's
right.
kind of my thinking of it, that I know things are still going to happen and it's still, going to be survival of the fittest. And there still could be just caterpillars that just die, just because they weren't strong enough or whatever. But, anytime you're doing things like this, death is just part of it. And it's very disappointing, but it wouldn't deter me from continuing to try.
Right. And the states that I know that at least one state that you are not allowed to touch them, which is interesting to me. So the you are not allowed to do that in California without a permit,
Hmm.
and that population is the one, at least as of right now, struggling the most. I believe that population had almost a 90% drop last year. I want to say they only counted 9,000, which is the second lowest number ever recorded. I believe in 2020 they had it as low as 2,000 because of the wildfires out there. So I just
Oh,
think it's
yeah.
interesting that that area is so much more of a risk area. And should the ESA, the Endangered Species Act proposal, actually go through, the only critical habitat that they had identified was in California. So it's just
Hmm.
interesting that the state made that decision considering their numbers. Now, like you've heard us talk on this podcast before, and we've had Mr. Lund Science on, and he talks about this on his YouTube. Planting milkweed is the number one way to save them, but you're still going to save some lives that might not have otherwise made it if you take in even 3 to 5.
Hmm.
So I think there is a measurable difference there for sure. Now, do you have a consistent, you get monarchs all summer long, right? Like they will be laying eggs on your property throughout the whole entire summer?
Yes,
Yeah.
we have a population that just kind of hangs out here until the fall, but they're just not as prevalent. You just don't see them as much as you see like the sulfurs and the swallowtails, and there's a lot of butterflies you see a lot more often. The painted ladies, we have a ton of painted ladies, um, and buckeyes. There's just a lot of butterflies that we have that you see so much more often than monarchs, except in the spring and in the fall. In the fall, especially, like I'm slamming on my brakes so I don't hit them when I'm
Yeah.
driving. They're everywhere in the fall. But we do have in some places, because we have a lease property for our cattle, and there's monarchs. It's got a ton of milkweed on it, and you can see monarchs all the time. But where at on my property, I don't see them very often. Now I did start planting Greg's Mistflower last year, which is an
Hmm.
amazing native, and the queen butterflies are everywhere, and the monarchs too. But I've always wanted queens and never got them until last year when I planted that Greg's Mistflower, and they're just all over it.
And queens are a species of butterfly that do not exist in the northern part of the United States. They only pretty much
Mm.
range in the southeastern part, I believe. I don't think they even range out west that much. And you've got a lot of species like that, which is really cool, and I'm really jealous about it. Of course. Um Now, obviously, we're dealing with climate change here in the US and in the world. Have you noticed any different in the monarchs' patterns or behaviors in the last 5 years in your area that could possibly be due to the impacts of climate change?
The only thing I notice, and we've only been out here for 4 years, and when
Hmm.
I lived in the suburb, you didn't see them nearly as much, but and I didn't think about it as much, but um it feels like they have sometimes later migrations or earlier migrations, depending on
Mm.
how the weather is. And what year was it? One year it felt like they were so early. Like they migrated in the fall so much earlier than normal, and we did have a really harsh winter that winter. So I don't know
Mm.
if there's some they have some indicators somehow.
Right.
Because last year they came in really late, and we had a really mild winter last year. So
Yeah, it's
I
hard to
mean, I don't
say.
know.
I would say that like it just doesn't seem as stable anymore.
Hmm.
Like it just seems like they're trying really hard to go with the flow. So like up in Wisconsin, I'll usually have monarchs through they'll stop laying eggs up here in like late August, early September, but I'll be rearing them until late September, early October. And so they'll be leaving at that point in time. And they usually get to the overwintering sites late November, mid December, kind of. So I believe they start leaving late January and get back up into Texas in February. Is that about the time that you would consider as early, or did they come earlier than February?
No, I don't usually see them in February. So February is early.
Okay.
I usually start seeing them in March.
Okay, so maybe that's like southern Texas where they kind of start to come in and then
Yeah.
make their way up. Okay, that makes sense.
Texas is real big.
Yeah, it is. Like I think we've had multiple conversations
Yeah.
about how like I can go to the next major city in 40 minutes or like an hour and then you have to drive like how far are you from Dallas? Like a couple hours or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, about 2 hours.
Yeah, it's I've never been there. I'll just come someday, but that's all I hear about is that how huge it is.
Yeah, you can drive 24 hours from one point in Texas and not be to the end of Texas yet.
Oh, that's wild. I feel
We used
like
to
in Wis
drive we grew up in central Texas, like right
Mhm.
outside of Austin, and we
Okay.
would go down to Padre Island and it would take like 9 hours. So
That's like from
it's
going to the bottom of Wisconsin to the top of Wisconsin.
yeah, it's crazy.
Now, since you guys have a ranch and you kind of like obviously you have their agriculture side and then you have your nature side, have you learned anything else about like your native habitat and the pollinators in your area from ranching? And I know I'm throwing this question at you. It wasn't on our list, but
Not really, except that I feel like you can do both. I feel like a lot of ranches, they spray their pastures and
mhm.
um they kill off the weeds and fertilize and do all this, but you can have both. You can have pasture land and natural habitat. And we have several pastures, and they're surrounded by woods, and at the edge of the woods is just full of native wildflowers.
Mhm.
Um, and the milkweed grows throughout the pasture, and the horses, the cows, nothing eats it. They know it's toxic,
Not
and
good for them.
they
Yeah.
just don't eat it. So that's what because Stephen is so into the ranching side, and I'm so into the conservation side. And
Mhm.
we've just found that like we would have a lot more pasture land if we just cleared the forest, but we've kind of found that balance where we can have nature be nature, and we can do agriculture without um with minimal being as minimally invasive as we can. I mean,
Right.
it's still land that isn't, natural, but we just leave as much to nature as we can. And we try to really promote um the natural plants and the biodiversity. And when I when the we have a ton of black-eyed Susans and blanket flowers. That's our main thing throughout the summer. And like when they go to seed, if there's a spot on our place that's sparse, then I'll just gather the seeds and go
Yeah.
scatter them over there, and then the next year we have them there too. And so um I just feel like it's kind of our responsibility to do as much as we can to keep, you know, the wildlife wild, and um keep invasive species out as much as possible. And eradicating them,
Mhm.
is exhausting and awful. And
Oh my gosh, yeah.
um almost, here, I don't know if it's everywhere, but here for sure, it's just invasive grasses everywhere, because that's they make hay out of it. And so, you just try to do the best you can to bring back what's supposed to be here.
Right, and it's definitely I think it's good that you guys are leading by example because I think that, like, it doesn't come to mind for a lot of people, like, you have your one goal, you're gonna f and farming is obviously, like, struggling right now too, like, it's a really important time to support small farms and ranches,
Hmm.
but I think it can you're an example of it can be done, you can find that balance where you are being having a growing successful ranch, doing what you do, and then also working in the environment that you're cultivating. So it's really good that you guys are doing that. I will always remember the video where Steven was mowing and he stopped because he saw the bees on the wildflowers on the side of your driveway. And he's like, I can't. I feel bad. We have to let this for the bees. And that is just like very much both of your vibe for your entire mission for what you're doing. Obviously, you have it for your family too, but the fact that you guys are doing it in tandem with nature is just really incredible. So kudos to you both.
Thanks.
Yeah. So do you have any goals for your garden in the next few years that are major, or are you just kind of rolling with the punches and continuing to plant native plants? Are there any species you're looking forward to attracting, or just if you have any
Yes.
thoughts? Oh,
My goal is for it to look like a Pinterest garden, but with native plants. Um, I'm ready
yeah.
for it to fill in. Some of these plants, it takes a while for them to mature and fill in. And the front half is finally starting to. This year, came in with some native ground covers last year, and I came in with horse herb, frog fruit, and Nepeta, and um what is that other one? Stone crop. What's it?
That sounds familiar.
Sedum or sedum or whatever.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I don't know how you say
Sedum.
it. Sedum.
I've always
Um,
said sedum. Maybe I'm saying it wrong. I have no idea.
but with the ground covers, they say like the first year they sleep, the second year they creep, and the third year they leap. And I don't know, maybe they were already in their second year when I got them. Because they're exploding this year and doing a good job of choking out all of the stuff that's not supposed to be there, but then it just grows around the stuff that is supposed to be there. So the front half is looking good. I have a lot of, oh, sorry, I got distracted. I have a lot
You're
of
fine.
natives that I don't feel like are as common. Like I have a lot of coral honeysuckle. Um, that's a native honeysuckle that it's not as aggressive as the kind that smells good. You can't really smell it. It kind of it grows on I have it growing on trellises, and it's just kind of folded over, so it just kind of looks like a bush now with a trellis supporting it. But the
Mhm.
hummingbirds love it. Like the butterflies love it too, and the bumblebees, but the hummingbirds are all over it. It can take full Texas sun, and it loves the heat, and it's evergreen, and they start blooming about February, and don't stop blooming until we start getting like freezing temperatures,
Oh,
which is
wow.
usually like January.
That's pretty cool. Are they,
um
ruby-throated hummingbirds?
I we have ruby throated. um this year I haven't been able to get a picture of it yet, but it's almost completely purple. But ruby throated is what I see the most. There's
That's what we get up here, and I know they migrate, but I'm sure a
Yeah,
lot of them just hang out down there.
there's a black one that's kind of I have a trellis for my cucumbers, and it when I'm out there working, it sits up on that trellis and watches me. But yeah, I had that those kind of ones that I don't ever see much of are the ones that honestly do the best. And they can handle the drought and they can handle the heat and that's all you ask for here with native
Right.
plants. If they can get through July and August and still look pretty, that's a
They're
win.
doing their job.
Yep.
They're real
So,
Texans.
yeah. I am my Shasta daisies are kind of blah this year. They haven't none of them have bloomed. They're just kind of
Really?
yeah, they're just
With all
kind
that
of
rain?
I know, they're just small and
Huh.
I don't know. My coneflowers are have exploded in blooms. The lantana, like everything is going except the Shasta daisies just look like sad little bushes on the ground.
Oh, that's weird because usually those guys can handle anything.
I added Blackfoot daisies this year and they've exploded too.
It's always
This is
interesting
off
how it
topic, but
works.
I
No, it's
heard
fine.
this and I don't know if this is true or not, but I saw a TikTok where she said, after you have thunderstorms and it's like your garden explodes overnight, like it's grown a foot
Hmm.
and more so than when you water. And she said it's because when there's lightning in the air, it charges the rain with nitrogen and so
Oh,
it
yeah.
explodes growth. So I don't know if that's true or not, but
I mean, it's true for nitrogen. I just don't know about it coming from the lightning and making it down, maybe. I have no
mhm,
idea. I know that like clover is really good at providing
mhm.
nitrogen and stuff like that, but I mean, if that's true, that's really cool.
I keep meaning to Google it, but then I get distracted.
No, I totally get it. One of my friends, this is going on a tangent, but this is what we do. It's fine. One of my friends in Iowa is really into growing tomatoes. And I didn't look into this because like you, I was looking into it and I forgot. But he was like taking copper wire and coiling it next to his tomatoes to like charge the tomatoes and make them grow
Huh.
more. I
Like in
know.
the
And I
ground?
keep, I guess, I don't know. But he
I
puts
haven't
them
heard
right on
that
the
one.
trellises next to it and it crawls up and it
Hmm.
looks cool and he swears by it. And I know you guys have had with your I don't know what it is about copper. Copper is such a weird element
Yeah.
because I know like the so you guys have those water troughs for animals and you guys put
Hmm.
like what a copper pipe in there to keep them clean.
Yeah. It's crazy.
That is it's just weird little things you'll learn and hear of and maybe there's science to it, maybe there's not. Maybe it just looks cool. I don't know, but
Although
copper
now
seems
Steven's favorite trough, which is weird that you'd have a favorite trough, but he got some little, they're not goldfish. I can't remember what
they're
they
like
are.
feeders.
Yeah. Because someone said you put those in and they eat the algae and it keeps it clean. And he put those in there and they survive through the winter. Like we have a heater to keep the thing from defrosting, but it went out
Mhm.
this year and our trough froze solid. And he was like, "Oh, my fish died." And then come spring, there they are. So, but
Wow.
he's went and got to the pond, the water plants that grow in the pond, and he's put some in there, and they grow in there, and then the fish hide them and feed them, and that's like the cleanest tank. But it's got plants in it. It's got water plants and fish in it, but it's always clean.
That's amazing. That'd
But
be
the
my
rest of them
favorite
have the
trough
copper
too.
pipes. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. So he was experimenting with one and then
Yeah.
that makes sense.
It's science.
It is. It's all science. Everything is science. So have you raised any other Lepidoptera species down by you? Like I know you said you have the queens, you have some swallowtails. Have you ever tried your hand at any other kind?
No, the monarchs are the only thing I've reared. I've seen the swallowtails caterpillars, and I find they're chrysalides sometimes on weird places in my garden, but
Mhm.
I haven't ever raised them. The swallowtails have really cool
Mhm.
pupas. They look so different, but I haven't even done a queen yet, and I want to do a queen because they have pink cocoons, pink
Yeah.
chrysalis, and so I'm hoping this year, because last year by the time I got the Greg's Mistflower and all the queens came, my what happened to my milkweed last year? Something happened.
I feel, did you guys have drought last year? I'm trying to
Yeah, I
remember.
think they all. I think it died off, but it did come back, so that's good.
Hmm.
But I'm hoping now. My Greg's Mist flowers are also late because they were buried in the dumb Johnson grass. But now that they're out, and they like the soggy wet roots. So now that the Johnson grass is gone, they've exploded in growth. So hopefully soon they'll start to bloom, and the queens will come back, and I can get a queen caterpillar because they're
And
so cool.
they're so cool, and they're they look very similar to monarchs. Like they're almost like monarch. I know they're not related because you'll go in a Facebook group and be like, they kind of look like monarchs, and they're like, they're not the same species. And it's like, I
Hmm.
know, but they kind of have some similarities. They eat the same plant. I think the queens have like three sets of the like filament antenna things.
Yeah, that's the only thing that looks different about them
Really, yeah. And
is they have
then
they have one in the center of their body.
right, and then the chrysalises look the same except the queens are pink.
Hmm.
And then the butterflies are similar-ish, but obviously a little different. They're really cool.
Yeah.
I really hope you do find them. And just a reminder to everybody that it is currently pollinator month. Today, with it being the summer solstice, it's actually nearing the end of pollinator week. Obviously, every month and every week is pollinator week and month on Bees and Reverie Radio, but take this opportunity this month to plant more native plants and get closer to nature. Maybe learn something about the pollinators around you. Maybe you have queen butterflies, maybe you have monarchs, maybe it's a bee. Whatever you want to do, just try to focus a little bit more and teach others about these important creatures that frankly feed us. So thank you for joining us today, Annie. Now HMR is on TikTok, but where else are you guys located on social media?
We are on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
And your handle is at Hot Mess Ranch, correct?
Yep, Hot Mess Ranch and everything.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. We'll
You're
have
so
to have you
welcome.
back. And to everybody else listening, thanks for joining us in another summer special of Bees and Reverie Radio. We are coming out with 2 episodes per month from June through August. Follow us on social media for more native plant and pollinator information, along with some behind the scenes content. As of right now, I have monarchs and swallowtails in my care, and I've been sharing them on my personal profiles as well as on the podcast social links. You can find the links to our socials in our link tree. And if you have any questions or thoughts, you can always email us at beesandreveryradio@gmail.com. So thank you for listening. Happy Pollinator Month, and thank you for planting native.